Hello and welcome to a new episode of Blumenfolk Film Talk. I'm Barnaby and joining me is...
Daniel Blumentsev.
And today we have our first ever guest, Minky.
Hello there.
So Minky, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I suppose most people sort of know me as a musician, but it's a little known fact that my second love is film. So I guess that's why I'm here today, to talk to you guys about films that we love or don't love.
Talking about films that we all apparently love, I finally saw Birdman.
Finally.
I thought it was pretty good.
It was a bit more than pretty good, though.
It was, I would say, about 1,000 billion times more than just pretty good. I'd say it's, if not one of the greatest films of all time, definitely one of the best films of the 21st century.
True, but what have we had in the last 15 years, though?
Well, my two very strong reluctant choices, which I definitely consider to be the best 21st century, are Mulholland Drive and now Birdman. However, I also consider The Social Network to be one of the best, and Zodiac.
See, Social Network is interesting to me. I have to watch that again. I watched it when it was out in cinema, and I thought it was pretty good.
Oh, The Social Network is so beautiful, and it's amazing how it keeps flying like a Fight Club, how it's like shot in a really cool flying cinematographic way, and it's so beautiful with the lighting and everything, and damn, it's such a great drama. And the music by Trent Reznor, oh, okay, now this, Barnaby's gonna agree with me with, right, dude?
Yes, the soundtrack was very good.
But he didn't even really write the soundtrack, did he? I mean, he made sounds, and then they got an arranger in to make those sounds into a film soundtrack, no?
No, he and Atticus Ross did it themselves. They did it from scratch, same with Gone Girl.
And same with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Zodiac. Okay, guys, Birdman is just such an immersive experience because of that one-shot style. Not only is it just a glorification of filmmaking, it's a glorification of acting as well. Everybody's just so brilliant and so alive and energetic, and it's just such an incredible script. It's so funny, so amazing how it's all set in that theater, and just an absolutely amazing film.
It was interesting to me how it was marketed and people referred to it as a comedy. To me, it was more of a deconstruction of film as a whole. It was like a play within a film within a film.
I actually saw this film at Zurich Film Festival, and the producer, John Lesher, he was there. He said that this film is about the love of filmmaking. That's what Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu wanted it to be, and what him and Emmanuel Lubezki were doing.
Supposedly, for the actors, it was a rather interesting thing to film.
Oh, yeah.
A whole nother ball game, yeah.
Yeah, every single take, they had to deliver about 7 pages of lines, I think, something like that.
It was more like doing a play with a camera.
How different do you think this film would be if it wasn't like one-shot cinematography? Do you think it would be as immersive?
Well, I think that long take, tracking shot itself, it actually puts us into the character's world and environment. So I think it's 100% immersive, but without it, I think that Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu is a great director, and he has these good dramas like 21 Grams, which is just a great drama, and there's no one-shot cinematography, and it's still immersive because he has a great script, great actors, and he's a great director.
It'd be interesting to see at what point they decided to use that cinematography, you know, the whole one long shot thing. It'd be an interesting point whether that was the initial idea for the script, or whether they had a script that was taking place within a theatre, and then they might have thought, well, let's make it feel more like a theatre by doing this. It'd be interesting to know.
I think that the script he wrote, he already envisioned a one-shot cinematography style.
It'd be interesting because it's an interesting question, actually, Barnaby, whether it would be the same film without.
I think, okay, look, the script and the direction are super strong, so I personally think that it would still be a strong film. Not as Oscar-worthy, maybe.
But it does have the stars in it, the names in it to be Oscar.
Yeah, but Oscars are just all bought anyways.
Well, that's my main point. 65-year-old white males who decides what's a good film and what isn't.
Talking about the one-shot style of Birdman, that really leads into our topic for today, which is how a director's cinematic techniques, such as cinematography, affects the viewer's understanding of a film's narrative. We've all chosen to talk about a specific filmmaker, and we will go one by one and talk about the one we have chosen, and then have a debate.
Just to add, guys, we aren't talking about music or anything like that. We're just talking about cinematic techniques.
But surely sound you can see on screen, diegetic sound. Say, for example, if you see a character play drums like you do in
so it's like a practical,
Whiplash,
but for music.
Yeah. And then non-diegetic is sound that's like a film score you can't see on the screen. But then, you know, the lines blur like in Birdman, where you're led to believe that this is non-diegetic sound all along the drum kit. And then every once in a while the drummer appears. I know we shouldn't really be talking about Birdman this far into the podcast, but without trying to spoil anything of the film, it does really lend itself to confuse the viewer in knowing what is real and what is a figment of imagination.
Minky, would you like to start with your filmmaker?
Well, thank you very much. I chose to talk about Edgar Wright. I think we all Love a bit of Edgar Wright here. And who doesn't? Edgar Wright, of course, being famous for directing the Cornetto trilogy. And obviously it's very well known that he uses cinematography as such a key element in his filmmaking. And so, of course, I wanted to talk a little bit about how he's able to speed up or slow down narratives just based on... I mean, have you guys seen that video that's floating around Vimeo about him talking about how he cuts and edits films?
I think so, maybe.
I believe you have sent it to me.
Yeah, it was an interesting video. The one that really stuck out to me was when he's talking about establishing shots. He talks about how it's really easy to fall into the trap of, say, if you have a character who's arriving into the scene on a bus. And
yes, I have seen that.
You have seen it, yeah. The trap of filming the bus coming down the road so you know where the person is, blah, 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 blah. And how he's reluctant to do that, so he's far more likely to just cut to a shot of the character's feet coming off a bus. And it's interesting to me how he's able to push films forward by not expecting his viewers to be stupid. Because if we see someone the feet of someone coming off a bus, I'm fairly sure the vast majority of people are going to be able to understand that it's a person coming off a bus. But it keeps his films lively. It kills time. The worst thing in a film is filler or exposition, and he's able to cut that out
Too many establishing shots.
Yeah, exactly. He's able to cut that out using cinematography, and the way he edits films is really interesting. You guys have seen Shaun of the Dead, I'm sure.
Yes.
What's Shaun of the Dead?
There's some pretty amazing cinematography in there. I mean, the one shot that really stands out to me, which you only really know is an amazing shot if you watch the commentary with it, is the one where, they're talking about the plan once they found out
of course.
the zombies. It's the mug shot. Not the mug shot as in a shot of them, but the shot of a mug, a tea of mug.
Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a whip pan onto these mugs of tea, and that shot is flat out incredible. No, it's really interesting to see how he treats cinematography.
All of his dolly-ins and those transitions with just...
Yeah, he really does treat it as a vital part, which was really interesting when you see the third installment of so-called Cornetto trilogy. In World's End, the style changes somewhat. See, they established the style of filmmaking that they make with Shaun of the Dead. There were some similar aspects, but very different to their previous work, Spaced. And then they really reinforced it with Hot Fuzz, and they really perfected it. And that film as a piece of filmmaking is just so solid. But it was really interesting to then, rather than try and top that, they changed the style somewhat in World's End.
I'm gonna disagree with you on that one. I think 60% of the film has all of those cool zoom-ins with the beers and stuff, and it's this visual comedy of Nick Frost with the water, how he doesn't drink. It's really, really great, I think, so...
That is pure Edgar Wright, and obviously it would be far too jarring to change the style completely. What is really interesting is there are far more long shots in at World's End, and especially during the fight scenes, and that is so different to Hot Fuzz especially. It pays homage to, but it also takes the piss out of action movie jump cuts and fast editing. That it was a little jarring, if I'm going to be honest, when you first see at World's End. But it really, really lends itself to standing out within the trilogy.
Mm-hmm. It's true. The first time I actually watched The World's End, I saw it the day it came out in London, and I didn't really like it. I was like, what is this? This is not that good as his previous ones. And then I rewatched it, and I was like, no, this is a great piece of filmmaking. Actually, there's some really amazing and original things that he does with the camera.
I must say, I think it's my favorite within the trilogy.
Really? It's your favorite?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. To me, you can kind of see the learning curve. Shaun of the Dead definitely feels like the first one. Feature movie. As they perfected it throughout the trilogy, in the end, at World's End, to me, stands out as a better ensemble. I felt that Hot Fuzz was a little bit long for me. See, I think as it goes backwards in time, it gets slightly weaker, so I think that Shaun of the Dead is probably the weakest one.
I definitely think that you can tell by the time he gets to World's End he's really learned, and I think working on Scott Pilgrim really helped with that.
That was an amazing film.
Yeah, I agree. It has amazing fight scenes, but I think because Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg worked on Spaced, and then they move on to Shaun of the Dead.
And Spaced is an early TV show with Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright.
But then they pretty much just moved on to Shaun of the Dead. Simon Pegg did do other things, and they're still working together, and then with Hot Fuzz, it's just his next project. So I think The World's End would have been really, really different if they had just moved on to The World's End right after Hot Fuzz. But working with Scott Pilgrim and a completely different crew, completely unfamiliar surroundings, different actors. Like, I don't think anyone from his other films shows up.
He just gained knowledge of different styles of like studio directing.
It's a fantastic piece of filmmaking when talking about how they use cinematic techniques in order to move a narrative. I mean, just
and a great visual comedy as well.
Oh, brilliant. And you know what? It's one of the only times Michael Cera has actually been fantastic and perfect for the role. I must say, though, that film, Scott Pilgrim, really does demonstrate what Edgar Wright is able to do with film and how to manipulate it. Just even when you're talking about supposed basic things like the lights dimming at the end of a scene, it's just a fantastic manipulation of film as an art form. And honestly, he's one of the best filmmakers I've ever seen.
Which is really interesting. As you said, Edgar Wright really has evolved and has become an almost different filmmaker. Like, obviously not a different filmmaker, but he's just learned so much. However, the person I wanted to talk about today, John Carpenter, he's an American director who got recognition for Assault on Precinct 13. But then his career really took off with Halloween, and he made The Fog and Escape from New York, and then The Thing. He really had the opposite effect. As he went on, he just went more, not insane. I think he lost his love for filmmaking. After The Thing, everyone thought it was a disgusting, gross film, and he pretty much lost his budgets, and then eventually his will to make good films. What I wanted to talk about with John Carpenter is mainly his use of wide shots to establish the mood of a film, and also to establish the setting. I'm going to pick probably his most famous film, Halloween. There is a shot earlier in the film where Laurie Strode, the main character, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is walking down the street with her friends. And it's this big wide shot. You can see that nice sunny town. It's got lots of kids, lots of teenagers. It looks peaceful. But in the background, you can see the sort of black figure, and that is Michael Myers, the killer of the film.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the way this wide shot adds to the narrative, to the audience's perception, what they're seeing is that Michael Myers subtly appears into the frame and disappears. And that's what makes it scary. Because everything is in that shot. It's like a painting. And then suddenly, in the background, this little figure is just staring at them. And it's so well shot that it makes it really, really scary and frightening.
Mm-hmm. I also think with the fact that it shows that it's a nice town, it also emphasizes when Michael Myers shows up. He does a similar thing in The Thing. At the beginning of the film, a helicopter ridden by some Norwegians are chasing a dog. This sounds really weird if you have not seen the film. But it's a big wide shot, and there's a dog running through the
just
Antarctic
a normal
wastes.
dog. Just a dog.
Yeah. A normal dog being chased by a helicopter. They're firing at the dog. They set up this wide shot and they make sure you see the Antarctic waste. Like, it establishes that these people are alone. There is no contact to the outside world.
Yep.
They are alone.
And that's what's brilliant about the movie, I think.
But I love his use of these wide shots. And it especially works in Escape from New York. There is a scene where Snake Plissken, the main character, played by Kurt Russell, is walking through a street, and there's just this gang. Well, I wouldn't really call them insane people, but they're the inmates.
Thugs.
Yeah, thugs. He's getting ready to fight, and then all these thugs appear from the ground, but they just walk past him. The way that John Carpenter shows it shows Snake Plissken walking along a wall, and it's moving across the street away from Snake, and it's showing all these thugs walking in one direction, and I think that makes it incredibly terrifying. They could kill Snake whenever they wanted to. They don't. They don't care. And it just shows that Snake is just this small part of a larger story. And I think John Carpenter's so good with using this wide shot to really establish the mood. And
if I can add something, I think that especially Halloween is a great example of his filmmaking style, because that shot, that wide shot where in the background there's this character who's just appearing and disappearing, that's perfect. It makes it really freaky and eerie. But also, my probably favorite one of all is essentially, it's this POV dolly shot, the point of view of Jamie Lee Curtis looking around the hedge, and it moves so slowly, and it's just looking around the hedge, making it so suspenseful and so scary. And it's like, you are waiting to see if there's anything behind the hedge or not. It's so perfect.
Yes, I just think the wide shot he uses really sets up the mood and really sets up kind of elements of the story, like with how Michael Myers can disappear and reappear really quickly.
Mysterious and
makes it mysterious. And whenever there's like an exterior shot, it really makes sure that you see how alone they are. So that's all I have to say about John Carpenter.
Now, let's talk about one of the greatest American filmmakers of all time. You heard me right, of all time. Paul Thomas Anderson. If you guys don't know who Paul Thomas Anderson is, that's really bad for you. You should be ashamed of yourself. So, Paul Thomas Anderson is an American filmmaker from the after New Hollywood generation of filmmakers, such as Quentin Tarantino and David Fincher, and he has made some of the most brilliant, original, just insanely powerful films of all time, I would say, such as Boogie Nights, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, The Master, Sydney, his first feature, Punch Drunk Love, and now Inherent Vice. He's one of my all-time favorite filmmakers in my top 4 favorite filmmakers of all time. But what Paul Thomas Anderson does is that he is the man for using filmmaking and cinematic techniques in order to progress a narrative and in order to give his audience a better understanding of what's going on and to establish the mood. So the thing that stands out about his films is the filmmaking, okay? So his most famous / notorious, whatever you want to call it, shot is the long tracking shot. So Boogie Nights, one of my favorite films of all time, opens up with the nightclub called Boogie Nights and Louis Guzman's character just walking in the club, and the camera just follows him, tracks him, walking through his club, interacting with all these characters, and it's a quite long scene. It's like 10 minutes long, but that scene establishes everything you want to ever establish through dialogue. It establishes it through the filmmaking, through that long take, such as the environment, the mood, all the characters there. Just literally the entire world of Boogie Nights is established in that first one shot. It's all one shot. And it actually follows not just Louis Guzman's character, but many, many characters as they interact through this nightclub. So that's absolutely amazing, I think. So it just really gives the audience everything they ever needed to know in the first 10 minutes of 2-hour and 50-minute movie. Second of all, he also establishes this in Magnolia. The opening of Magnolia is not really a long take, it's something else, but the next scene of Magnolia is one of the most amazing pieces of filmmaking I've ever seen in my life. So Magnolia is this epic mosaic of characters, of more than 10 characters in this one film. And it's 3 hours long. It's absolutely amazing. And in the second scene of Magnolia, what Paul Thomas Anderson does is he uses whip pans and long takes in order to cut smoothly and flowingly throughout all of these 10 plus characters to establish them and to show what they're doing. It's an absolutely amazing, exuberant scene. You're just sitting there. No, you're not sitting there. You're just flying. It's like Fight Club. You literally just fly through. And it's absolutely insane. It is amazing. That establishment of character with this incredible filmmaking that engages you and just literally drags you into this world leaves for the next 2 hours and 50 minutes of just this pure, daunting and harrowing, intense drama that Magnolia is. The second sort of cinematic technique, not present in all of Paul Thomas Anderson's films, but especially in Boogie Nights, is the use of framing. There's a scene where Mark Wahlberg is sitting in a diner with this director and his girlfriend, who's played by Julianne Moore. And the scene is this. So the director is talking to Mark Wahlberg, but Mark Wahlberg is distracted. What that shot is, it's a POV shot from Mark Wahlberg's point of view, and it's a wide shot of the director and Julianne Moore in the frame, but then the camera just literally moves to the right, removing the director from the frame and isolating Julianne Moore, so her on the left-hand side of the screen, and the other right side of the screen is just space, which clearly perfectly shows Mark Wahlberg what he's thinking, and he's just being distracted at Julianne Moore. It's an amazing, subtle framing composition technique, which completely explains the story without, showing Mark Wahlberg, turn his head, and then it cuts to showing Julianne Moore, and, a close-up. No, it's really subtle, and it's just amazing. Paul Thomas Anderson's career is quite interesting because his first film, Sydney, the main cinematic technique of that is a long shot. There's this one long shot which completely establishes the main character. That's beautiful. So I just talked about Boogie Nights, Magnolia, how it creates this exuberance and this intensity through these long takes and whip pans to establish character and to establish mood and everything, which is amazing. Then after, he made a film called Punch Drunk Love with Adam Sandler. This is a shift from Paul Thomas Anderson's exuberant style. This film is kind of a change in style where he uses mise-en-scène of color to add symbolism and to explain the feeling of Adam Sandler and expressing his emotions and what he's feeling. So, okay, for example, there's this amazing scene where Adam Sandler's character is just shopping, but he is an isolated guy, he's really nervous and everything like that, and he's just shopping, but he doesn't know what he's looking for. And then that shot is in a shallow focus, so it's just Adam Sandler in the frame, but then in the background, you can see some figure in a red dress just suddenly move by. His color is blue. All the time, his office is blue, his suit he was a blue suit, which symbolizes loneliness. So he's in the supermarket searching for what to buy and stuff, and then this glimpse of this red figure just passes by, which symbolizes what he wants, his needs. And that was actually the girl he falls in love with, his character. That was her. But you actually don't know if that scene that was actually her there, or that was just Adam Sandler's subconscious or whatever. But as she passes by, or as that red figure passes by, Adam Sandler automatically realizes what he needed to buy, which was pudding. So that redness ultimately puts him back in form and back in certainty, and like showing him the way and getting him back together. But that color red, you automatically see the difference between blue and red, that red is what he wants and blue is what he is. It's a really, really great movie in terms of mise-en-scène. And okay, specifically cinematography, there are a few lens flares in here, which are actually used for a purpose. So when Adam Sandler and that girl who he falls in love with are in contact, and when you know that there's love, a lens flare happens. And it's really cool because basically, if you just watch the film and be completely absorbed by it, you will understand it by instinct. Because, okay, there are the three main colors. Blue, which symbolizes Adam Sandler's loneliness. Red is like what he wants, and like so his girlfriend's in red. And then white. White symbolizes that Adam Sandler is isolated. So there's actually a scene where he is lost in his girlfriend's apartment, and he's just like running, and all the walls are white. So it's like him being in this void of nothingness. So it's amazing. It's like your subconscious actually understands what's happening, but you don't really understand it. So it's like instinct, you know what I mean? It's really, really, really amazing.
But would you say that Paul Thomas Anderson is more of a showing filmmaker than a telling?
His filmography is so strange because his first three films have this particular showing style, which I was talking about, like through the long takes, which you establish everything, which is absolutely insane, amazing. But then he shifts to this more subtle style of The Master. In The Master, what he does is he introduces the characters through these close-ups, because all of these characters have really complex backstories. So what the actors are saying while they're in these close-ups, that is so powerful. So in The Master, it's more dialogue-based, where you actually imagine what's going on. Whereas Magnolia and Boogie Nights, these movies are just completely, well, okay, not completely visual. All of these films are so many things in one. He does use a visual style, but however, he writes really well, and you do as well have to imagine what these characters are saying at certain parts. So he is just a ton of things.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully that gave you guys an insight into how cinematic techniques can affect a narrative. And that's all for today. Daniel, where can we find you?
You can find me on my Instagram, which is Dan Blumensev, BLUMENSEV. And hopefully my website will be up by the time this podcast is released. So I will link you guys to that.
Yeah, Minky?
Well, I suppose you could find me on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Foo Fighter Fix. A worse name, I know, but yeah, it's like the Foo Fighters bar the S and with the word fix at the end.
All right.
There you go.
And you can find me at my website, barnabyfolk.wordpress.com.
And if you enjoyed this, subscribe and pass it on to anyone you think will be interested.
And like it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem, man.
It was good fun.
Thank you and good night.